Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a moment in history that is just absolutely wild. Napoleon Bonaparte was an unstoppable force until one catastrophic decision doomed his entire empire. We're talking about the 1812 invasion of Russia, where a massive army of over 600,000 men marched straight into a frozen nightmare. Let's explore exactly how absolute, unquestioned dominance turned into utter ruin. Okay, let's dive right into this. You've got this incredibly stark contrast. On one hand, you have the master of Europe, confident, sharp, totally in command. And on the other, the grim reality of a broken leader trudging through the freezing snow. How on earth does someone go from being absolutely invincible to dragging a decimated army through the ice? Section 1. The height of power. Before 1812, the French Empire was quite frankly an absolute juggernaut. Napoleon's aura of invincibility wasn't just clever propaganda. The guy had shattered major coalitions time and time again. But here's the thing about that level of unprecedented success. It morphed into this blinding hubris. He genuinely believed that his strategic genius simply could not fail. So what sparked this whole disaster? Well, it was the continental system. Think of it as a massive political and economic chokehold aimed squarely at suffocating Britain. When Tsar Alexander I of Russia flat out refused to comply with it, Napoleon took it personally, like very personally. To force Russia back into line and secure total European dominance, he assembled the largest invasion force Europe had ever seen. Section 2. The fatal decision. Now, Napoleon's grand strategy was unfortunately built on a mountain of fatal assumptions. He was banking on a quick, knockout victory, so he only packed supplies for a few weeks. And get this, he actually sent his men marching off in summer uniforms. He completely underestimated the sheer mind-boggling scale of Russian geography, ignored his own logistical limits, and basically pretended the brutal Russian seasonal climate wasn't a thing. Section 3. Scorched-earth tactics. So the crucial point here is the massive disconnect between their two strategies. Napoleon strutted in expecting your classic European war, big, decisive set-piece battles. But the Russians completely threw out that playbook. Their strategy? Avoid direct confrontation at literally all costs. They retreated deep into the vastness of their own territory and practiced scorched earth. By destroying their own farms, burning their crops, and leveling their villages, the Russians ensured the Grand Armée was slowly starving as it marched blind right into a trap. Section 4. The Moscow Turning Point. When Napoleon finally reached Moscow in September, he was fully expecting a glorious surrender, maybe the keys to the city on a silver platter. Instead, he walked into an empty, burning husk. The Russian governor had actually ordered the city set ablaze. So now, Napoleon is sitting there with no winter quarters, zero supplies, and absolute deafening silence from the Tsar. And this is where total decision-making blindness takes over. Instead of reading the room and cutting his losses, Napoleon just lingered. He waited in the smoldering ruins of Moscow for 5 agonizing weeks, falsely convinced that the Tsar was eventually going to crack and sue for peace. That stubborn, blinding pride, that refusal to turn around before the snow started falling, is exactly what sealed his tragic fate. Section 5. The Disastrous Retreat. Let's see how this builds into a truly horrifying timeline of collapse. Look, even in the summer, his supply lines were stretched way past the breaking point. By autumn, horses were dying by the thousands, leaving artillery completely stranded in the mud. And then the infamous Russian winter arrived. We're talking temperatures plunging to minus 30 degrees, starvation, typhus, and these relentless hit-and-run guerrilla attacks from Russian Cossacks just systematically ripped the retreating columns apart. The reality of this hubris was just completely devastating. The environment itself broke the most feared military machine in history into pieces. Men literally froze to death in their sleep or were just left behind in the endless snow. To put this into perspective, out of that massive army of over 600,000 men who confidently marched into Russia, fewer than 100,000 actually stumbled back out. Section 6. Collapse and Legacy. The domino effect of this failure was immediate, and it was irreversible. First, the whole myth of Napoleon's invincibility, that died right there in the Russian snow, taking the Grand Armée with it. Second, sensing blood in the water, the rest of the European powers instantly united and formed a massive new coalition against France. Because of this one single, disastrous campaign, within just a couple of years, the entire empire officially collapsed. So it leaves us with this incredible question. If blinding pride and geographic overexpansion can completely destroy history's greatest military mind, what does that teach us about leadership today? Underestimating your environment, refusing to adapt, and living in your own echo chamber, those are fatal flaws, whether you're navigating a 19th century battlefield or running a modern organization. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this deep dive into 1812 leaves you eager to dig even further into the history that continues to shape our world.